Hello, everybody. It's great to be here one more time today. My name is Gary Fowler. I'm the CEO President of GSD, Get You Done Venture Studios, premier AI and quantum venture studio located in the heart of Silicon Valley. I'm a 17-time serial entrepreneur with several unicorns under the belt. I was on the original management team at Click Software, which was sold to Salesforce for $1.35 billion. Also, Eva.ai, an AI HR tech company I co-founded with Dr. David Yang. We believe at GSD that intellectual capacity is evenly spread, but opportunities are not. Today, I'd like to welcome each of you to GSD Presents Top Global Startups. I'm Gary Fowler, the founder and CEO of GSD Venture Studios, where my family office is building together with visionary founders, the future of AI-driven innovation across industries. And a few industries matter, no industries matter more than healthcare. Today's episode is titled Healthcare Innovation, Bridging Pharma Expertise with AI Precision. My guest is Dominique Surinx, CEO and President of Ansana. Dominique brings a rare combination of deep corporate pharmaceutical leadership and entrepreneurial execution. With over 20 years inside global pharma organizations, including Lonza and Pfizer's Capsugel division, and more than a decade building and scaling ventures in highly regulated markets. He understands both the complexity of healthcare systems and the urgency of innovation. At Ansana, he is leading the commercialization of smart sterilization technology designed to improve patient safety, operational efficiency, and sustainability in hospitals. It is not just incremental innovation, it is systematic transformation in one of the most overlooked yet mission critical areas of healthcare infrastructure. He holds a master's degree in engineering and business administration, and his career reflects that dual lens, engineering logic combined with strategic business execution. Today, we will explore how AI is moving from a back office analytics tool to a frontline catalyst in healthcare, how startups can navigate regulatory gravity, and why operational excellence may be the hidden lever that unlocks true medical innovation. So, with that, I'd like to introduce Dominic to all of you. Hi, Dominic.
Hi, Gary. Thank you very much for the excellent introduction. It's really a pleasure to be here.
You've spent 2 decades inside major pharmaceutical and supply chain organizations like Lonza and Pfizer. When you're in there, I remember I did it for a few years. I worked for Hewlett Packard. I remember there was a lot of times we would have meetings to have meetings, right? And just because it was a large organization. But what did you see from the inside that convinced you the system needed reinvention?
That's an excellent question, and I think you're absolutely right. I mean, of course, large corporate organizations are wasting a lot of time in meetings, and there's a lot of politics going on. And it's definitely one of the reasons why I decided to become an entrepreneur and to change that paradigm. But at the same time, it's not all, let's say, negative, I would say, because you've got, let's say, all the possibilities, you've got the cash flow, and if there's good ideas, there's many good innovations possible as well. So I've seen both sides. I've seen where innovation really doesn't go on because of politics, but I've seen also very nice innovations coming from large corporations. But I must admit, it's with less personal impact. And for me, it was a great step to become an entrepreneur myself and to innovate myself, actually.
So, many executives stay in corporate leadership roles. What triggered your shift from corporate pharma to entrepreneurship?
There were a couple of things I would say. Definitely the idea to do something, yeah, different, to have a larger impact instead of being part of just a corporate organization and follow the guidelines. The personal drive to really make a difference, I would say, and say I really want to have an impact on patients' lives. And I really found some good partners to do that. So yeah, that was actually at the end an easy choice after 20 years in corporates, definitely.
You've operated across Europe and the US. How different are these ecosystems when it comes to healthcare innovation?
That's a very good question, Gary. I think I see really some huge differences, and maybe I can elaborate a little bit more first, maybe on the difference also between pharmaceutical industry and healthcare. I'm still, although I'm a little bit older, I'm still pretty new to healthcare. Since 4 years, I'm in this area, and it's both very highly regulated environment. And to be honest, when I was in pharmaceutical, I thought it was a conservative environment, but in healthcare, it's even more, I would say. It's even more fragmented, more stakeholders to convince. So innovation is even more difficult in healthcare. And that's where you also see the very big geographical differences. Um, for me, with quite some experience, I'm being Belgian and being European, but quite some experience in the US. Also lived a couple of years in the US. You really see the difference in appetite for risk. You even see in healthcare, hospitals and health systems are much more business driven. And if you come with a good business story, people will jump on it and will say, "Okay, this is a good idea, and let's try it. If it doesn't work out, okay,
Where is
then."
that? Is that in the US or in Europe?
In the US, exactly, yeah. So there's a much higher risk for appetite in the US, and it's also why Ansana has really decided to go for the US as a first market. I mean, it's a bigger market, of course, it's less fragmented, but especially this appetite for risk and for innovation is definitely the biggest driver for us to decide for the US first. Now, at the same time, I mean, Europe has got this advantages as well, and therefore we're in a unique position to combine the advantages of both, I would say. Um, I would say in healthcare, Europe is for the moment definitely overregulated. I think everybody knows the story about the medical device regulation and how it creates capacity roadblocks at the notified bodies and so on. So there's definitely a roadblock for innovation. At the same time, this highly regulation, yeah, forces us to do things in a very structured and robust way. Although not everything is very useful, but some things really are. So if you can combine somehow this innovation drive together with doing it in a very robust and structured manner, I feel like you're taking advantage of the advantage of both regions, to be honest. So.
But the problem is, I deal with researchers all over the world, doctors from Yale, everywhere, actually 73 countries. And the problem we have is going back and I'm sure you feel this is infobesity. We have too much data and it's too hard for people to process it, right? To figure it out. So using these tools like you have, like StereoWatch, where you're integrating sensors and real-time tracking data modules. The problem is the doctors don't have the time. You know,
Hmm.
busy. Last thing they want is to get sepsis, to have somebody get sick or staph infection. But at
Hmm.
the time they're so busy, and they have to on one side they have to be sure they're covering themselves so they don't have a lawsuit. On the other side, they have to move quickly because there's only so much time. They can't afford to tie an operating room up too long because it's going to cost them a lot of money.
Hmm. That is absolutely correct, Gary. And the way I feel it is that healthcare is definitely, and doctors are quite innovative, especially if it concerns medical technology. If it concerns more process improvements, like Ansana is trying to do, it's much more difficult. There is no time for that. There's no time to look at data. There's, to be honest, less skills also available to look at data.
But
So
this
it doesn't, yeah.
don't do it, it kills you, right? The thing is, if you're not sterile, you die.
Yes, well, you have the possibility to die indeed. So it is really crucial that this is being looked at the right way. And at this moment, there's still 3% of surgical site infections in US and Europe. It's very similar. So this is a huge amount of patients being affected. So you really want to make sure that your instruments are sterile and that there's no risk for the patient. But in order to do that, indeed, there's no people, there's no competencies to look at all these data, and that's why AI can play such an important role, or at least a platform that does the analysis for the doctors, for the managers in the hospitals, and gives the alarms whenever it's needed, actually. And that's exactly what we're trying to do.
No, I love it. I said, one of the things I've been writing about, I write a lot about healthcare tech. I've probably written 100 articles about it. And, taking it very integrate, Aristotle said the sum of the parts equal the whole, and so did our German friends, right? Gestalt. and we've got to take a more integrated approach to everything. And so,
Hmm.
looking at sterilization, of course, if you don't do it, you could die or get a severe infection. At the same time, we want to improve people's lives. We don't want them to go through all these miserable things that would happen if something sterile. And it's not that somebody does it on purpose, it's oversight. They just miss something, because
Hmm.
you're tired or pushed or whatever. But I love what you're doing. Dominic, AI is often described as disruptive. Healthcare is highly regulated and risk averse. How do you introduce, the intersect those two together and introduce AI without triggering resistance?
Hmm. Again, a very good question, Gary. And like I said before, it's definitely not easy to innovate within healthcare. I think we've taken a unique approach to it in the sense that we are developing a medical device. So if you look at our hardware, which is real-time track and trace, sensor module, which measures all of the process parameters, the software platform related to that, who captures all the data, processes the data, that's kind of our medical device. And this part is what's being FDA cleared or CE certified through notified bodies in Europe. So that part is falls within the highly regulation when we go to all the right things. The AI part is a layer on top of that, which is less regulated, so which helps us to monitor all of these processes from a distance and support the hospitals without having to go through all of the very difficult regulatory parts. So I think it's a little bit unique in our sense because we have to generate our own data. So that's why we have our platform and our medical device that we're developing. But the AI part is actually outside of that. And we have much more flexibility and can develop that and train that in a very different way and a much more flexible way. So it's a combined approach, I would say, and that definitely helps.
The AI can, really create incredible efficiency gains in pharmaceutical and hospital workflows. Where do you see over the next 5 years? I mean, how much of an impact do you think it's going to have, Dominic, across the board in hospitals and
Mm.
pharmaceuticals? Because they're inefficient, right? I mean, like it or not. I mean, I've never seen personally so many. Well, I have, but in a hospital you would think if it's life and death it wouldn't be inefficient, but sometimes it's incredibly inefficient and
Mhm.
expensive too.
Mhm. I agree with your comment there, Gary. And again, if you look at purely medical innovations and AI being there, I think it's much easier to have them introduced as long as you provide the right data and validation and so on. Again, if we look at, let's say, the process side of things, and they're also in a unique position to be able to combine all of the industrial experience and apply them to healthcare. You see that hospitals are basically running a couple of decades behind the industry, if you now compare it to pharmaceutical or automotive electronics.
Is
And
right,
there,
but then they have these Da Vinci surgical machines that are right on the cutting edge of robotics. It's crazy, right? Doesn't make sense because you go into a hospital. I had a situation. I won't name the hospital, top tier hospital in the U.S., but I went into the hospital and it was, um, it was the most inefficient system I've ever seen in my life.
Mhm.
And in order to get somebody to even see me in that hospital, I had to make a call to a friend of mine who was on the board of trustees of the hospital to be able to get him to go to the CEO, and I did it through LinkedIn. And all of a sudden, I had premier service. I was a VIP. I had
Mhm.
concierge service on steroids. I'd never seen anything like it. And
Mhm.
you know, I mean, I don't know what it's like in Europe, but here in the U.S., if you don't have a concierge doctor, it's hard to get the right kind of service.
Mhm. And I think you're absolutely right. Again, I mean, if you look at medical technology, it is really cutting edge, and there is really great innovation into all of the hospitals, and it's really impressive, to be honest. But again, indeed, if you look at logistics parts, the process part, and I think you highlighted it before, the integration of all of the systems and the platforms is exactly where it goes wrong in hospitals and where the big opportunity is. So it's also extremely positive to see that how much progress there can be made, certainly for an industry who's
Yeah,
taking.
I agree. And if they don't adapt, they die, right? And on that,
Mhm.
you're going to go out of business because if somebody uses, these very sophisticated frontier tech AI models, they're going to be do things that, instead of 100 people, there'll be 5 people doing them. It will be hard to keep up with them, and they'll be a lot more precise. But let's talk about this. So ISO certification and regulatory strategy, um, play what role are they going to play in building credibility for AI enabled medical devices, in your opinion? Is it important or not? Or is it we keep running forward and build stuff and use it to cure, to help solve problems?
I do think it's very important, to be honest, Gary, that also that part is going to be more regulated. And maybe I'm not talking a little bit against innovation here in general, I would say. But there also needs to be a certain confidence with the public, with the patients, that this is being evaluated the right way. Because I'm pretty sure, I mean, companies can do innovation, and sometimes they'll do a great innovation, and it should be implemented in a couple of months, and it's helping people all around the world. At the same time, there can be innovation which is maybe not so robust, and if you apply it the wrong way, it can actually cost, yeah, patient's life, to be honest. And if you just have a couple of these items and this gets out in the news, in the media, people start to lose confidence. So somewhere having a framework of regulation, I think it's still going to be very important also for the future.
Many of the founders underestimate compliance across the board, right? Timelines.
Mhm.
People are building startups. Sometimes you don't have time because you're trying to just to be able to stay alive for another month.
Mhm.
What do you see as the most common regulatory blind spots that health tech startups don't look at?
You know, I find it a difficult question to answer because what you're saying is absolutely true. And sometimes, if you would know all the roadblocks, you probably wouldn't even get started.
Part of building a
So
startup.
you deal with them as you go along. But it is really important to be really aware of them from the beginning. And I think with Ansana, we were just lucky. From day one, we started working on our quality management system. We started getting the right consultants in, both on the European side as well as on the US side, to guide us. What are the regulatory processes? What are the steps we need to take, and so on. So we try to take a very proactive approach in that. And I think I can only, recommend that to every founder to have a really decent evaluation before you even get started, to be honest.
You both an engineering and a business administration background, and sometimes they're diametrically opposed, Dominic, right? Because,
Hmm.
uh, you know, um, when you're taking risk as an engineer, sometimes you don't want to take risk, especially when it's healthcare. But in the business side of it, as an entrepreneur, that's what your life's all about. If you don't take risks, you don't win. So
Hmm.
these those sometimes diametrically opposed disciplines complement each other in helping you build Insana.
Yeah, I think it's a very nice statement, and I agree with you that sometimes they're opposed, but I rather see it almost as they're helping each other, partly. Because indeed, I mean, as an engineer, you're trained to do everything very structured and make sure everything is right and so on. But you also get a lot of statistical training, I would say, and you just have to learn to deal with uncertainties. And I think where it helps, if you apply it the right way to be an entrepreneur, is I mean, you can never eliminate risks, but you have to manage the risks as good as possible, with all the parameters and info you have at that moment, and you have to take decisions. So, and still thinking about it in a structured way and saying, what are my options? What do I estimate as the risk for every option? And you just take the least risky one. It might still be a very high risk one, but it helps you, I think, to decide the right options. And being an entrepreneur is not just let's do whatever. It is, I mean, still thinking about it and then taking calculated risk. That's and yeah, I love to combine both, and I think it brings a lot of value.
One of the things that as I've gone down through this journey, and I've been building companies for a long time, all over the world actually, and you look at some of these early stage accelerators. They come in. Rarely do you get the people that have actually built unicorns going down through and helping you. It's kind of like they're trying to tell you what it should look like, but they've never done it.
Hmm.
you know, I know, I met with one of the guys that won Formula One, and we had this conversation. He said, it's always good to have somebody that's won the race because they can tell you what the pitfalls are, which,
Hmm.
where there's a little oil in this corner, etc. And I didn't understand it till I understood world class is like Olympians. They have the same thing. Well, it's the same situation with a startup because you have these Harvard started the first MBA program. It was to teach managers how to manage, not how to be entrepreneurs. The
Hmm.
typical C is between 25 and 34, and they never build a company, only 10%. They're trying to tell you to do it. And sometimes it's diametrically opposed to what you want because they've got the 2 and 20 rule. They're out there, they've got to deploy capital. But in reality, and they're trying to push you forward, maybe you need to do a little bit more R&D.
Hmm. Hmm.
That we've been working with is, I'm down in Palm Beach right now at some of the family offices. The family office have 99% of the wealth. Most people don't realize that the wealthy people in the world, 1% of the population owns 99% of the wealth. And we forget, and this is like sales, right? You got to go to people you would always call to the top. Why wouldn't you deal with the people that have the money?
Hmm.
By the way, they're interested in health tech because I'm presenting to them a lot. I just did it at I was out at the JP Morgan Summit and had a ability to meet with a lot of folks and also to present. And those people have the money, and they're the ones that want to live longer. And the things that you have in Sana are to be able to help people live longer lives. You reduce risk, right? And it's incredible. But where I'm going with this, it's interesting because Silicon Valley, Dominique, is a port to the rest of the world. Like it or not, good, bad, or indifferent, 50% of the money in the world is located there. People come there like a port. They're going whether they're from New York, whether they're from Miami, whether they're from Luxembourg, whether they're from Lagos, Nigeria, they come there to invest. Why? Because the deal flows cleaner and people get it. They understand what's happening. I know you participated in an accelerator. I think it's Senior Sinai, right? But
Hmm.
how do you go down through? And I see this a lot. You got to get it's selling to the top. How do you get from where you are in Belgium to become a unicorn? Because it's hard, right? Europe's on one side, it's on one side it's conservative, right? Oh, I don't know. Maybe we got to take more time. Come on, Dominic, you got to prove the model works. We don't want people dying, and it could be like 3 years figuring it out. You never get a chance to take it to market.
Hmm. Yeah, I think resilience is probably the key word, Gary, but also to definitely yeah, diversify your means of financing, and I think you're highlighting a very big difference between the US and Europe again. I mean, it's clear that in Europe there's less capital available for these kinds of developments and really risk capital. So it is something we're struggling with. On the other hand, it helps you, yeah, diversify a little bit. Ansana has been really successful in getting quite some non-dilutive funding as well. And on the dilutive side, on the equity side, it has been a mix between early stage VCs, business angels, and yeah, you try to look everywhere. But it's definitely also one of the reasons why we're looking at US. And I would say we're halfway. We just opened our US legal entity in Delaware. So we're already at the East Coast. Now we still have to make it to the West Coast. But I think the financing part, and certainly if we're going to be successful in the US, which our first market is, and we're going to grow there, we're definitely looking for financing there as well. And yeah, coming to the US, the financing is certainly one of the drivers, I would say. And it's linked to the risk appetite. And, there's much more risk appetite. Definitely, I can only agree with your analysis.
You know the I remember. So I started one of the first generative AI companies in 2016, 3 years before OpenAI. And you can imagine then people were like, "Oh, AI, it's not going to happen for 25 years." You can see it in TechCrunch. There was an article about us.
Yes.
But I said you're wrong, and the problem is data because there's too much data around us. So we went out to raise the money. I started in April timeframe. By July, I'd raised $7 million in a seed round. 7 million. This is in Silicon Valley. So and people said, "Well, why did you do that here?" I said, "It's pretty simple. I got $7 million in a seed round. It gave me a choice, and I gave exactly as much company, gave up exactly as much of the company as I would have done in Europe, but I would have raised 1.5, $2 million, maybe. And it would have
Mhm.
taken 3 times as long. And I
Mhm.
go out to depending on where it would, I have to go out in the pub and have more drinks than I would want to figure it out. It was crazy. But
Mhm.
that part of it, getting it is critically important, especially when you talk about things like artificial intelligence.
Mhm. Mhm.
And
Mhm.
the the scale is unbelievable now, right? Um, anyhow, when you went down through, you raised a $1.5 million seed round. What were the investors looking for and the market condition, the market environment that it is right now? What were they looking for?
Well, of course, as in every startup, they're looking for a good exit strategy to make sure that they don't get stuck within the company, I would say. But all the investors I got are really trying to make a difference in the world as well. I mean, obviously, everybody looks at the financial side. What's the potential? What's my multiple going to be at exit? What's your strategy? And all the aspects. I mean, is your development protected? Do you have a market? Can you show me some customers already, and so on? So that's the standard thing, I would say. But since we are still quite early phase, you also need investors who really believe and who want to make a difference. And that's with my co-founder, let's say the venture builder in Amsterdam, but also with all the people, if it's now business angels or early stage VCs, who say we are an impact investor. We, with the money we have, we want to improve people's lives. And that part of it is, well, without that drive, I wouldn't have been able to close the seed round for sure. So I think both.
It's important. It's important that um, the impact investors a lot of times today. In fact, I'm at one of the top conferences that's going to happen in April. I'm actually in the health tech side. I am the keynote talking about impact investing in health tech because it's
Mhm.
critically important. You know what we say, Dominic? Nobody wants to die.
Mhm. Exactly, or have a bad life because of some medical issue, I would say. Yeah. So,
The quality of life is critically important, right? You want to
yeah.
live as long as you can in the highest quality of life. Uh,
Mhm.
so we're coming to the top of the show. If AI fulfills its promise in healthcare, what does it look like in a hospital in 2035? How much do you think it's going to change?
I'm thinking here for a second. It's a pretty difficult question. I mean, it's 9 years out. Um, I think it should have a huge impact. If it's going to be the impact that we think it, I think the jury is still out, to be honest. But of course, what's really crucial is that there's more work on prevention. And that is what is lacking because the business model is now, well, we wait till people get sick and then we try to cure them.
I think it's absolutely. I've had this discussion time and time again. Continuous sensing and monitoring to be able to live longer, better quality lives, and early detection is critically important.
Yeah.
And I know you and I talked about a little bit before this show. I can tell you some other situations, but I'm with you there. And if we catch it early, but I don't think the system, to be honest with you, in the U.S. is really focused on that because if
Mhm.
you look at it, we have so many organizations set up that making money on doing things like cancer that
Mhm.
it's not in their best interest to have something cured, right? Because all the
Mhm.
infrastructure's gone. And
Yeah.
I'm not sure everything's lined up. And I was with somebody, very high level person, insurance person, and I said, let's talk about health insurance in the U.S. And I'm not sure everything's lined up there. But I think if the life insurance companies ran our healthcare initiatives, we'd be a lot better because they'd want us to live,
Hmm. No,
right?
again, you're absolutely right, Gary. And I think there's going to be a lot of resistance against this change in model from yeah to go to prevention or prediction much more than today. But I don't think there's another choice. And if we're talking
I
within
don't.
a
We
field,
can't. We're going to go bankrupt in the U.S. in another 3 4 years or so because the healthcare premium costs are so much. I know just for my wife, I'm paying almost $1,600 a month for one policy just for my wife, and she's not that old. You know what I mean? She just hit 50. So,
yeah,
and it's insane. And if you look at the average cost went up 28% last year. Of course, I can take care of it, but what about other people out there that can't? It's
hmm,
crazy. No wonder there's so many bankruptcies because of healthcare in the U.S. because the system's inefficient. It's crazy. And I don't know what it's like in Belgium, although I think the system, what I've seen, some of the systems in Europe that I've been exposed to were better, but they also have their faults too.
yeah. I mean, accessibility is probably easier in Europe because a lot of it's paid by the state instead of privately. But at the same time, it's also not geared towards prevention and prediction. So also there, the mindset has to change. It's exactly the same story on both sides of the ocean, Gary. But again, with the aging population, there's no other choice. I mean, it's just not sustainable how it is today. So, and I'm pretty sure we'll have to go through really a bad period first, and things to go bankrupt before people really start changing. Yeah, because people are making so much money on the way it is today. So,
Yeah, no,
but.
I 100%. Well, listen, we're at the top of the show. If you want to stay on for a few minutes, Dominic, after the show's over, we can talk a bit. It would be great to talk to you. I want to thank you so much for joining us today. How do people get a hold of you? What's the best way? LinkedIn, email? What's the best way to get a hold of you?
Yeah, I think LinkedIn or email, both are fine actually. That's probably the best way. Don't call me in the middle of the night.
Don't call Dominic in the middle of the night unless you're going to give him an investment.
Yeah, exactly. I'm
And
aligned
make
with
it
that.
a big one. The later it is, the bigger it is, right? So
Yeah,
that's
exactly.
Uh, I really appreciate you taking time out of your busy schedule to join us. And thanks to all of you for joining us today. I'm now at 1,600 podcasts. If you get a chance, my book is going up the bestseller list. It's called How Stem Cells Changed Me. So check it out. I believe, as Dominic does, that we can use the technologies, the AI, the quantum computers, the technology to be able to make our lives better and more fulfilling. And all of us, wherever we are, no matter what race, color, creed, we all should have the access to be able to help us get better. And some of the most sophisticated countries are the ones having the biggest healthcare issues right now because of costs. So appreciate Dominic taking your time out of your busy schedule. And again, thanks to all of you. Stay happy, stay safe, and stay healthy. And I will be back to you again soon with another GSD Presents Top Global Startups. My name is Gary Feller, and I'm the host. And I'll be back to you again soon. Thanks, Dominic.
Thank you very much. Pleasure to be here.